coming, and it's time I hit the road. Leave all my mistakes behind.
Hi, everyone. If you're listening to the recorded version of this, you will have just heard Dr. Konstantin Batygin's band with their song Outlaw. And so there'll be a little more on that later on. If you have no idea what I'm referring to, that's going to be the post-production one. Hi, my name's Nicholas Beaudoin. I'm a director of AI programs at Caltech's Center for Technology and Management Education. A little bit about CTME. We bring Caltech's brightest minds, from professors to researchers to experts in industry that are building AI systems. And we offer this robust offering of on-campus programs, on-site trainings, and also remote programs that really range from executive level leadership all the way down to hands-on developers. But I'm really excited to bring in today Dr. Konstantin Batygin, a professor of planetary science at Caltech and one of the world's leading experts when it comes to the origins and dynamics of our solar system. A little bit about Professor Konstantin. In 2016, he and colleague Dr. Mike Brown of Caltech shook up astronomy by presenting evidence of this existence of a mysterious planet 9, a giant unseen world orbiting far beyond Neptune. And I'm sure Professor Batygin can tell us a little more about that. But his background in research has earned international recognition, from awards to being named Forbes 30 Under 30 in science. But here's the cool part. The interests don't stop in astrophysics. He's been deeply engaged with artificial intelligence, both in scientific research and beyond. And on top of that, he's a musician serving as guitarist and vocalist for the band The Seventh Season. So today we'll explore how AI is changing the hunt for new planets, the way we prototype and create in science, and even the future of music itself. So Konstantin, thank you very much for joining us today.
Nick, it's such a pleasure to be here and always great to chat with you.
Cool. All right. First and foremost, most listeners are probably thinking about Planet 9. So before we dive into AI, maybe we can get a little bit of background about your famous work that you did with your colleague, Mike Brown. Can you give kind of the 10,000 foot view for people who might be a little bit new to it and kind of where the hunt for Planet 9 is today?
For sure. Yeah, let's, I like to give kind of the 10,000 astronomical unit view, right? Because that's really the scale at which we're thinking about, right? It's 10,000 times the distance between the Earth and the Sun is roughly, sort of the end of the solar system. And if you zoom in one order of magnitude interior to that, right, that's where Planet 9, we think, lurks. So let's maybe start by recalling that in all history of humanity, right, the only two planets that we have discovered that were not already known to the ancient civilizations are Uranus and Neptune. And Uranus was discovered by just kind of looking up at the sky and tracking where a star is and seeing it slowly move across the night sky. That's how Herschel discovered it in the late 1700s. But Neptune was calculated. Neptune's existence was calculated because from the gravitational influence it exerted on Uranus. And similarly to that, we today see orbital anomalies in the orbits of Kuiper Belt objects. These are kind of icy asteroids that live beyond the orbit of Neptune. And if you look at some of the longest period, the largest kind of orbits that we would know of in the Kuiper Belt, they'll kind of point in the same direction. They're all tilted by kind of a common angle. So it looks like some external gravitational agent is aligning the orbits, keeping them confined. And that's one of the simplest lines of evidence for the existence of something in the solar system beyond Neptune. And there are other more complicated lines of evidence, but the point is that by doing numerical calculations of the solar system's evolution and comparing them with the data that we have at hand, you can demonstrate that the current data are best explained by the existence of kind of a 5 Earth mass planet orbiting at a period about 10,000 years around the sun on a mildly elliptic orbit. So that's kind of the basic picture, right? We see gravitational evidence for an extraplanet in the solar system.
Now, has things like this happen before, where scientists say, "Yep, I believe that there is a planet nine," or when the solar system used to have nine planets before the
Mhm.
knocking down of Pluto. Were observations or research like this done beforehand?
Absolutely. So, Mike and I like to joke around that only idiots, kind of propose planets in the solar system at this day and age because it's been done so many times and it's always wrong, right? I mean, like everybody after the discovery of Neptune, because the discovery of Neptune in 1846 was such a big deal to confirm the celestial mechanics kind of prediction. Everybody and their brother wanted to like predict planets in the outer solar system. So I
And
think
it
the
was a
first
fairly quick prediction, right?
for Leverrier, yeah. So he really publicized his prediction, I believe, in March of 1846. So he gave a talk at the Parisian Observatory, and people sort of clapped and were like, "Pretty good math, but like." Keep keep going, right? And he was like, no, it's really out there. And they're like, okay. And so it's interesting, like he wasn't really able to drum up much enthusiasm in France for an observational campaign to find Neptune, but he did send letters kind of to everybody, to his friends throughout Europe, and in the end, it was a German guy. That was Gall, who was assisted by Dore, who discovered Neptune, and that was like an epic discovery because it was September 25th, in 1846, I believe. It was the birthday of the director of the observatory, so the director was like, I'm going home. Like, you guys can do whatever you want. Right. And they're like, well, we got this letter. Like, let's take a look. And then, the sky went dark. They opened up the dome, found Neptune in 1 hour. Right. Because with the way that alignment of planets was in 1846, you actually knew where to point very well. There's an important difference between the current situation and what was happening back then. Back then, Uranus and Neptune were close to conjunction. So Leverrier actually couldn't calculate the orbit very well or the mass. So he got both of those somewhat wrong. In fact, he had to make assumptions about what the orbit had to be. Like he had no way of really inferring the orbital period or anything like that. But he could see where the acceleration was coming from, so to speak. So it was like, it's right there, right? In case of Planet Nine, we're in the opposite regime where we see this collection of orbits of minor bodies beyond Neptune that have been corralled by the gravity of a distant planet. And so we can calculate the mass and the orbit with pretty good precision. We don't know where the planet is on its orbit. Okay, so this makes it difficult to search the night sky. People will often ask me like, "So where's your planet at? Like, why haven't you found it? If you think it's out there, like, how hard could it be?" And the answer is it's very hard because there are lots and lots of very dim stars on the night sky, and the night sky is a big place, and it's difficult to look when you don't know where to look.
And so obviously there's probably advances since 1846 in Leverrier's predictions. How has some of the equipment advances most recently been able to help you? Specifically thinking about Rubin.
Yeah, so there are two kind of avenues I want to touch on here. The first is the calculational domain. I mean, Leverrier had at his disposal like a quill, probably some wine, like a candle, some papers, and just like his extraordinary intellect and the ability to carry out perturbative calculations of what's going on in the solar system to extraordinary order, right? Like I think famously he in one of his calculations he went out to eighth order in the perturbation series and didn't make any mistakes, right? Like this was absolutely epic. He was a remarkable mathematician, right? Today, somebody who is considerably less smart, like myself, can still make a little bit of progress because we're aided by computational tools, right? Over the last really 30, 40 years, the fact that you can now do experiments on your computer where you kind of set up the solar system and evolve it forward in time. You can put in Planet Nine of various varieties. You can put in kind of test different things and really treat your computational domain as an experimental bench, right? That has completely transformed and indeed has given a renaissance to solar system dynamics, right? Like, I mean, if you think about it, solar system dynamics is maybe the oldest form of natural science, right? It kind of, or it's not the oldest form of natural science, but it's the kind of some of the oldest problems, like the two-body problem. Why do planets appear the way that they appear? How do comets appear the way that they appear? Are things that date back to Newton and beyond Newton, right? So it's quite remarkable if you think about the fact that we still are, in an age where we're discovering brand new things about this problem. So one is the ability to do the theoretical side and really have a sandbox that you can design and not have to wait millennia for these experiments to complete. The other is the observational side, and the observational side now is again very distinct from how it was in the 1800s. I mean, the way it was in the 1800s was like, I think Dare would look at the map and Gal would look at the telescope and would be like, I see a star. Is that star on the map? And it would say, that star is not on the map, right? That was like, that is sort of the most romantic thing you can imagine about astronomy. Today, it's like, we took a 90-second exposure and it's like terabytes of data. And you can't, in fact, it's fun to do. You can just zoom in to various parts of the image, and it doesn't really matter where you zoom in. You will eventually find something, like there's a distant galaxy or some kind of star. But the amount of data that's coming through is so great and so overwhelming that it has long been that human beings, it's like well past the point where human beings can do any meaningful analysis. So you have to rely on machine learning to help you kind of look for moving objects.
I was in a discussion the other day and talking about this very subject, and somebody said, "Oh, what about all the, those poor graduate interns who are going to be put out of a job?" So, are there enough graduate level interns in the world to be able to comprehend that amount of data, or do you need machine learning techniques to be able to facilitate that?
At this point, I think you could, I mean, yeah, if you employed the entire population of the Earth, you probably still wouldn't be able to process all the astronomy data by hand. And it's also because you're looking for things that are so subtle that, this is something that like a century ago, you had to be good at flipping two images and seeing a star that moved a little bit. Like Clyde Tombaugh, who discovered Pluto, was actually quite good at this, where he was able to notice this dim star slowly moving across. Right? That's just not something that you can do when your field of view is the size of the moon and it includes so much information at such depth, right? So yeah, this is not a human task, and it's a good thing, right? Like that task was the most annoying thing about being an astronomer a century ago, right? That's sort of like the heavy lifting part of the work that is just not fun at all. So I'm very kind of optimistic in this regard for like ingesting of AI and machine learning into scientific methods, because ultimately it allows you to do the fun part of being a scientist and outsource the like brain dead part that makes you, take a lot of, painkillers just like to just like numb the headache. Is that part goes to the machine. It's great.
Can you talk a little bit about Vera Rubin coming online and what that
Yeah,
looks like for your potential discoveries down the road?
100%, 100%. So we are, you know, at an important precipice right now because Vera Rubin just turned on maybe a month ago. I think they had the first kind of commissioning set of images. They discovered a bunch of asteroids. I mean, who cares? No one cares about asteroids, but like they found them. Okay. So the Vera Rubin Observatory, where is it? It's in Chile, so it's in the southern hemisphere, right? What is it? It's a telescope that wakes up every night and sort of just, searches the sky that is available to it. And then, after a brief declassification process, it makes all the data available. So it is a it is a survey that is designed to kind of give as complete and at an unprecedented level a complete picture of what is in the night sky, and it's called the Legacy Survey of Space and Time, I think LSST, right? Importantly, right, this is a game changer for looking for objects beyond Neptune because the survey is so efficient. Okay, and here's what I mean by efficiency. When we would go and look for Planet Nine, we kind of stopped 3, 4 years ago because we were like, this is not going well, right? And the reason it's not going well is you get, 3 or 4 nights a year. That's what is allocated to you on the largest telescopes in the world, because other people also want to use it for their research. Da, da, da. Okay, so you go, and in order to make a detection of something like Planet Nine, you need 3 consecutive images of the same part of the night sky, and because you need to detect motion and then kind of acceleration, right? So you need 3 points. Okay, so think about all the things that go wrong during 3 nights, right? The telescope breaks, fog rolls in, the atmosphere randomly will become turbulent and like mess up the light. And so you're just kind of always killed by the weakest link in that chain of 3 nights. So as a result, even if you say, okay, I've searched right there, you don't really know like just how complete your survey is. And in this regard, like I'm not between me and Mike, like I'm not the lead on the observation, right? I'm more on the theory side. And Mike is a phenomenal, like he's a ninja observer. And the way that, the survey is designed, like the way that our search was designed was, I think, the best that you could plausibly do. Even so, it's probably 50% efficient. So there's this, annoying feeling like we don't know if we just missed it. We looked right at it, and because of some fluctuation in conditions that have nothing to do with us, we like completely missed Planet Nine. Entirely plausible. That's not something that Vera Rubin suffers from because all it does every day is the same thing, right? It just looks at night. And so it covers the entire available sky to it every few months and then just keeps going. Now, it might not find Planet Nine because Planet Nine might be too dim to be found by Vera Rubin, or it might be too north. So annoyingly, the Earth is not transparent. Okay. And so like being in the southern hemisphere does not allow you to reach certain parts of the northern sky. That's something I learned only when I started observing. Like it never quite occurred to me that this was going to be a problem until, late, kind of midway through being, a professor or whatever. But all of that said, the reason this is going to be a game changer is one way or another, all the patterns on which our hypothesis, our theory is built are going to be independently tested. And it's going to detect, I don't know exactly how many new distant Kuiper belt objects, but many. And all of that will put all of this theory kind of into the ring. And that's quite exciting because most astrophysics, on the theoretical side, you can just kind of do work forever and never really know, right, if you're right or wrong. Like a lot of people have very strong opinions about being right or wrong. That's fundamentally because they doubt that they are right or wrong, right? And I think this is one of these problems where there's a near-term observational resolution, and that's like that's it. We're gonna know the answer.
Well, transferring from astronomical discoveries to something that I know you've been using a lot lately, let's talk about generative AI and the process of prototyping. So,
Oh, sure.
most people have heard about vibe coding. Andre Karpathy made it very, very popular when he kind of labeled it what we were all feeling. But we're talking about things like Cursor, Bolt.new, various co-pilots, pick your du jour
Hmm.
capability. Have you found, be it yourself or your students or your postdocs, an ability to prototype quicker? And what does that mean for your field?
So first of all, it has been a game changer for me. Okay. And I'm deficient in many ways, but one of the main ways is that like I'm a terrible coder and I always have been. All my code is like, stitched together with a little bit of tape and some hamsters in a wheel. And it's just like
A lot of
on the
copy paste
verge.
from Stack Overflow and stitching that together.
It's a lot of it's not even that good. Okay. It's just like it's worse than that. It's worse than that. In fact, I recently wrote a paper where I had to go back to some of the calculations I did in grad school. And looking at I was like, who did this? Like this is just terrible. This is the worst thing I've ever seen. Right. This should be like this is criminal level bad. Um, and and so a lot of my time was spent just like coding stuff up. It doesn't work. It breaks all the other part of the code. My computer fan is just like working overtime. The computer's about to float up and like fly away to the moon. So it was just this huge bottleneck, right? And suddenly, right, it was maybe around 2023, right, when the ability of LLMs, right, to ingest tracebacks and meaningfully analyze those tracebacks and sort of give like, oh, well, like, just fix this little thing here and there, right, giving that advice and kind of recursively being like, oh, it didn't work. Let's try a different thing. That completely streamlined the way that I work, right? I mean, even just thinking about data visualization, which is a huge part at the end of the day of doing any computational astrophysics. Right? You do all these
Yeah.
calculations, and then you get terabytes of data. What do you do with it? Right. Well, you have to find useful ways to look at the answer. And it used to be like, oh, well, let's make this distribution. An hour later, you're like, oh, well, this distribution looks like nothing. And in any case, I'm not even sure that I did it right. And so like the ability to accelerate that flow has been absolutely critical for me. For my students, right? I have students who have come in from sort of non-traditional backgrounds, so they only started coding 2 years ago, say, and back, 5, 6 years ago, like if you just didn't have that experience, it would have been really rough to catch up to sort of the standard kind of Caltech level graduate student who's expected to, be at the top of their game all the time and sort of produce, very meaningful results. And suddenly it's like outsourcing the painful part to the machine where it's your creativity that really goes into the model and also like learning along the way, right? Having the machine teach you some of the best practices. That's been really revolutionary. So I've been able to work with students much more effectively, I think, because of this. And I think some people in academia are kind of suspicious of LLMs. I always encourage the students and the postdocs to just use all the tools that are at your disposal. Like this is not the worst thing that's going to happen is it's not going to work, right? And it's like just go. So yeah, it's been absolutely game changing.
Yeah. Thinking from a different pedagogical standpoint, how do you think it affects students who are learning to code or learning proper theory when they're applying to a rigorous institution like Caltech as an undergrad? What advice
Mhm.
would you give to somebody who might be learning to code? It could be someone in high school, it could be someone doing a career switch or hitting the job market for the first time. Is it cold
Yeah.
turkey, no LLMs, LLMs a little bit, or full on Gen AI coding solutions?
Yeah, I would say all of the above, right? I mean, and I know that they sound contradictory, but I think it's all of the above. There is a I think full up LLM, right? You will be at a disadvantage if you never really understand what's going on because, right, it's a little bit like I mean, it's a little bit like trying to make music with like a synthesizer when you don't know anything, like you don't know how to play anything, right? You're just not going to be as good at it. Um, so understanding the basics and understanding the structure of what's going on and not just, you know, mindlessly copying and pasting output into like Google Colab, but looking at the output and then understanding what's going on. Why does it work the way that it works? There's a huge cognitive thing that happens where if you're able to code it up, right? If you're able to make it work, that means you understand it, right? And that process of going through and kind of making a little model that does something is very important. It's okay if you get help along the way from the LLM on the syntax, but understanding the logic is not something that I think you could ever really get rid of, and that's really not something that this is what I also see as people get better at vibe coding. It becomes this kind of hybrid human machine enterprise where it's almost like a conversation between the two rather than a drawing relationship where you just say keep giving me more code, right?
So, do you think as these Gen AI tools become more ubiquitous, do you see a different skill set for scientists and engineers, or is it more higher level thinking, more abstract thinking, while a lot of the Gen AI capabilities for coding take out some of the mundaneness?
Yeah, I think so, and I think with every technological revolution, there will be growing pains. Like there will be some people who will be like, wait a minute, like the thing that I was good at is code development. That was my, you know, that's what I dedicated my career to. I was developing these tools. Uh, you know, what does it mean now that the model can kind of do that for you? But if you really think broader, right, there's no limitation in what a model like there's no final step of a model, right? There's always things we would like to do that we just don't have the capabilities to do because it takes a lot of effort to develop a given code base. It takes a lot of time, and so I view this really as an accelerant towards building um, you know bigger and better numerical experiments, and also frankly creating a broader array of computational techniques so that you're not kind of saying, okay, I would like to solve this problem. I have, four different codes that I could in principle use. That none of them is perfect for this, but this one is the least imperfect. So I'm going to use this model for this problem. Instead, being able to customize much more the existing models towards each problem, like that's going to be, as time goes on, a broader industry. And I think that's a good thing.
No, and that's a very good answer and exactly what I was hoping you would say too. All right, so transitioning from Gen
Mhm.
AI and astrophysical discoveries, let's go over to music. Before we go over to
Sure.
music, if anyone is in the chat thread, hit that subscribe button, like button. That's what I'm supposed to say, right, Konstantin? This is going to be
Yeah.
on YouTube one day, so we want to get as much subscriptions as possible. I think we have like three or something.
Yes.
Put into
Subscribe and save all of the above, right?
Konstantin underscore 20, get 20% off. I don't know. What is it? Caltech bookstore merch. Maybe we can start up like some kind of sponsorship from them.
There you go.
All right.
Yeah.
So if you do have any questions, pop them into the chat thread. I'll try to sprinkle them in organically as we go. But this is the section that I was really excited about. I would love if you could give an introduction to the seventh season. If you are listening to the podcast version, you would have heard a song beforehand, Outlaw, that I would love you to kind of maybe give a little intro about the song as well.
Okay. Well, so the seventh season is our band. We're about 4 shows away from becoming the next Metallica. You already feel it. Okay. We've been 4 shows away from becoming the next Metallica for the last 15 years. So any moment now. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I went into astrophysics largely as a backup because, I wanted to sort of pursue music out of high school, but I also had suspected, just because we had played so many shows all over the West Coast, and I like had seen that in order to make money, you just have to play in a cover band in a casino, right? That's like the way you survive. And then the remainder of the time, and some of the guys, you meet along the way are like, oh yeah, well, I'm doing really well now. Like I finally was able to, move out of my car and into a motel, right? And so I was like, okay, I have to have something else for my kind of like to sustain my financial streams. I'll do something practical like astrophysics, and so I've maintained that interest in doing music. At this point, I frankly, like jokes aside, love the fact that I'm just doing it for me and with the rest of the band. Like everybody is just enjoying themselves. We play live, every couple months, and it's so much fun. And like our shows are actually getting better. It helps that we're starting at, like the bar is set very low. So like, but I do think that we are kind of just trying to improve upon the last iteration all the time, both in terms of music and also in terms of like the visuals, right? What we project, on the screen behind us, what the kind of like, the theatrics part of the show. And, I'm always writing songs. And so, over the last, I guess, 2 years, like we released an album in 2023, then another one in 2024. And usually when we put out any music, I assume like my wife will listen to it and like my parents will listen to it, maybe my kids. But suddenly something happened in like March of 2024 where, like I get the daily or quasi daily like, update from Spotify. And it's just like suddenly lots and lots of listens, like, racking up like thousands. I'm just like, what? Who is this? And I assumed it was my wife who had like figured out how to open up 1,000 browsers, and just like, yeah, just like bot, like kind of like a, attack on Spotify. But instead, what had happened was Outlaw got added to some like influencers, list of songs, and it sort of like had its brief moment in time, which was really fun. And it was a song that sort of like briefly made it, and it's really cool. It's also one that we just love to play live because it's a simple song, and it's kind of, it's at the right tempo and the right groove where like if you've been drinking at the show, you're just like right there, right? It's kind of like 125 beats per minute. Like you're just
And
like,
what beverage does it pair best with in your mind?
oh, it's definitely whiskey, right? I mean,
Okay.
it's kind of a song about being an outlaw. So yeah, this is not like, this is not a cocktail lounge song, right? Um, I assume it's never been played in a cocktail lounge. Um, so yeah.
So having been to one of your concerts post this March 2024 revival, um, I can say firsthand that it is most excellent and highly recommend anyone follow you or anybody, who is in the Pasadena area. Now, if you happen to be in the Pasadena area, how could somebody find out more about future concert venues?
Ah, okay. So uh, I would say the simplest is I'm on this platform called twitter.com,
Never
right?
heard of it.
Yeah, I think they changed it at this point. So yeah, I've had so I'm not super active or anything like that, but I do post about band stuff on there. On Instagram, we are the dot seventh dot season, right? So we're always posting stuff about shows, and our website is, I believe, the seventh season dot rocks. I'm trying to remember if that's true.
I think
I
last
hope.
time I looked for it on Google, you were one of the first ones. And by the way, if you haven't seen the origin story of the band, it's pretty good. I think it's on your about on the homepage. And
Ah, yes.
so
Yeah.
can you talk a little bit about the origin story? I thought that was one of the coolest points of
Oh,
it.
for sure. Yeah. So the seventh season was my dad's band actually in the Soviet Union. And you know, or like a lot of people would like to kind of imagine themselves to be kind of rebellious and kind of punk, for just like skateboarding inside instead of outside and just like, stuff like that. But like really, playing rock music seriously in like the 70s and the Soviet Union, where it's sort of like not, looked down upon, kind of not allowed, right? Is just about as, you know, as actually rock and roll as it gets. And my dad, you know, and I actually kind of restarted the band in I think it was 2003 or so, where I had like my previous band had fallen apart, and I was like, yeah, like why don't we just play? And so for about a decade, I played in a band with my dad, and it was really fun. We played a bunch of shows. I don't know how many hundreds of shows together, and then sort of life happens, people move around, and so I kind of kept the band name and kept things moving forward. But
And
the
also
roots,
also a scientist, right?
yeah, my dad's a accelerator physicist, so like working on beam dynamics predominantly. I didn't quite know what he did until the pandemic, but like the pandemic gave a moment when I was like, we were at the time had moved to New Mexico where my parents lived, and I was like, I'm gonna figure out what my dad actually does. And so I kind of like looked into both some of his publications and just like random books that were laying around, their house. And then I was like, wait, like some of this has direct parallels with planetary dynamics. And in fact, like I always assume that people that work on planetary dynamics are not as sophisticated because it's like the stakes are low, right? It's just like planets. If you get the wrong answer, like no one will know, right? But with particle accelerators, like people will know. But to my surprise, some of the mathematical methods that people use in that field are not kind of as advanced as what had been figured out in celestial mechanics. So we wrote a cool paper in like 2021 with my dad published it in the physics of plasmas on kind of onset of chaos within beams
Hmm.
from self oscillation. Like really, I'm going on a tangent,
No, this
but
is
yeah,
perfect.
but it was really fun.
So I've noticed there's a tremendous musical scene on campus at Caltech.
Oh
And
yeah.
there's also these brilliant minds like yourself who kind of marry this, well, you would think it'd be two completely dichotomous subjects. There's another rock metal group on campus that I've seen in Pasadena that I was blown away from called Dr. Metal. And one of them is Dr. Anthony Ardisi, who works in the nanoscience lab as the lead singer. But all four members are either JPL or
Hmm.
on campus PhDs in physics. And so, what is it about really, really smart engineering scientists who also make music that you just don't think is comparable together? For, at least for you, what was it?
Well, I think it's that, being kind of a science nerd, fundamentally that you're highly uncool. So you gotta like you try very hard to be cooler, and playing in a band is sort of the obvious like shortcut to trying to be as cool as possible.
Not the
The,
tuba, right? The tuba in a band's not going to cut it either.
well, there, I, if it's ska, there's nothing.
Fair point.
Yeah,
Real big fish tuba player was one of the coolest
exactly.
guys out there, I think.
Yeah, yeah. It's like either ska or I don't know, I feel like this kind of wave has passed now, but like about 15 years ago, right? Like the sort of hipster thing of like having the weirdest instrument and just like looking weird and kind of whistling in songs. Like that was another moment when like tuba was
It sounds like you just described
momentarily.
my home life, Konstantin.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other component is that look, both processes, right, doing science and doing music, right, they uh, probably use largely the same part of the brain, right? Learning how to play an instrument, you have to be patient with yourself and be okay with like being really bad for the first 1,000 times or something that you play a passage because, and it's the same thing with science, right? You have to be okay with being really bad at first, right? With just like not knowing anything, and you have to internalize and almost take joy in the fact that you're really bad at it, and that through hard work you will get better. Okay, but when you get better, you will still be really bad compared to what you kind of could be, and it's a never ending uh, kind of path. And so I think there's that. It's also just music has always been kind of a critical part of my life, and I don't really know what it would be like to not play music. And I think
No, that was really well said. And have you found that it helps you kind of break through maybe some log jams you have in your scientific thinking, or be it in your
oh yeah,
coding structure, to just sit
oh
and
yeah,
jam and be able to kind of uncover that?
absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I think that unlocking the creativity part of the scientific enterprise is 100% correlated with creating music. Like if I get stuck on stuff, just going away, playing, and it's not like I'm playing and then suddenly I'm like, the integral has solved itself, and right, it's not that. It's that when you're also actively playing, it's so your brain kind of in the background is also working the right parts to also get creative scientifically and not be repetitive. So for me, the two things are absolutely correlated. And there's just also like if I don't play music for a prolonged period of time, like if I don't play for a week or whatever, I I notice that I just get kind of weird. I mean, or weirder than usual. And so, my wife's like, you should go play your guitar for a little bit, like it's gonna help you out. So yeah, it's been a kind of you know, a lifelong, obsession of mine, and I will continue to do it until I can't, but frankly, like until I die.
Well, I know this was a very long prologue for folks listening, saying, come on, man, I thought this was an AI podcast. We're getting there. So here's where the AI piece comes into
Hmm.
music. So let's talk a little bit about Gen AI and music. Like last year,
Absolutely.
or actually it was 2023 when the Beatles released Now and Then, which was this, AI assisted song that ended up winning Best Rock Song at the Grammys. How have you seen AI positively or negatively affect the music scene kind of from your environment?
Well, certainly, right. I feel like let me just like um say the first thing about Now and Then, like it's such a beautiful song. It's such a vulnerable, beautiful song. And at the same time, yeah, it's interesting to kind of even listen to the messaging around it, right? It was sort of like, some of the messaging that came out from, uh, kind of the Beatles like PR machine has been almost like endorsements, right? It's like we endorse that this is indeed a Beatles song, even, and it's only partially there. That said, it would not have been able to like they would not have been able to make it the way that they would not have been able to do what they were able to do without, right, that level of machine learning. Because my understanding is that
Mhm.
they wanted to um, work through Now and Then also in the same sessions as like Free as a Bird, right, and Real Love in the 90s, but just the recording was
Yeah.
too lo-fi. So um so I find that to be a fascinating, development. I think that's wonderful. On the other hand, right, I think, AI will push even further the kind of quantization and standardization of some aspects of music, but it's not like, we didn't have that before, right? If you really like, a lot of modern metal is quantized and precise to the level of just like inhuman level of technique, and it's almost not interesting because of that, right? And so I think there will be a lot of use of AI in music that will result in garbage, and then there will be like with any technology, a lot that will lead to like really cool, really creative stuff that would not have been possible. And one of the things that I would say, just like playing over the last 25 years, is that people's attitudes have changed a lot. Right.
Mm.
When I just started playing in bands in like 2000, it was this like, the notion was that unless you like recorded it on a tape deck that you made yourself, and like you had your like girlfriend like cranking the tape, and like you refined the magnet from magnetite, like then it doesn't count, like you're just like a poser, right? And so like rock music going from that to being like samples and just like aspects really of like hip hop that have penetrated um, rock music being perfectly okay. I think it has given like, it's kind of become less conservative, so to speak,
Mm.
and I think that's a good thing.
That's interesting because I kind of think there's the argument of, okay, we won't have discovery of new music because I'll be honest, I don't discover new music like I did when I was in high
Hmm.
school. And I remember
Yeah,
in high school, it's like you had a friend's CD. It was definitely a burned or ripped off CD. You were in their car. You're like, oh, wow, yeah, Smash Mouth. That sounds really good. I should give that a listen to. Um, but with algorithms already deciding what we're listening to next in our queue, like I think I was on the way to work one day and I was like, oh, I'm feeling kind of down. It's like, you would enjoy Sweater Weather playlist. I'd be like, yeah, that sounds good. Will
you
there
would
be
enjoy Outlaw, okay?
yeah, I would. Yep, that is what
Yeah,
I would enjoy. Outlaw by the seventh season. But maybe that's going to be one of the next listeners.
yes,
Is there going to be a road in the future? Be like, okay, instead of Sweater Weather, let's create a new song. Like I don't know. I remember there was an episode of like The Family Guy or The Simpsons where
yeah.
I think he had his own like theme music every time he walked in a room. Like, is that what it's going to be? Like, I'm on the way to work and it'd be like, hey, man, it's Tuesday. Nick, here we go. This is a song for you. What do you see in 10 years with Gen
Yeah,
AI and music?
great question. So I find that unlikely, because it's not like there is not I mean, you could already sort of do that, right? Like the number of artists and songs on Spotify, I think greatly exceeds the a number of like emotions that anybody could like all of humanity could plausibly feel, right? And instead, you know, you still have, artists that are huge, and the vast majority of artists, like the Seventh Season, who are, let's just say, less huge. And I think, right, the
But
cult
they're
of person.
four shows away though.
That's right. Like, yeah, look out. But yeah, so I think that in order to really get rid of that, you'd have to change psychology of humanity away from the cult of personality. But the cult of personality is embedded in how we think. Like we always just humans look for some kind of an idol, some kind of a leader in every aspect of what we do. And so I don't think it will be, it might be kind of like AI idols, but they will still be singular, I think, rather than, um, you know, it's, and frankly, so far, right? I would say that while, now and then is an excellent example of like using the technology to create something fantastic. Most other AI assisted stuff has been kind of lame, and you can listen to the AI created songs. Right, there are these playlists of like just AI created jams. You can tell there's something wrong, right? Like there's something about it that doesn't that doesn't sit right with you. Um, and that's the same thing I also felt like, gosh, about 10 years ago. There was this YouTube channel that was it was like an infinite black metal riff. Okay. Just because, like
Some say
there,
it's still going to this day.
well, I think it went on for years, right? It was, the same tempo with the kind of double bass, right? And sort of, an AI basically create,
It's just up and
playing.
down the pentatonic scale. That's what it devolved to.
Right. And you just listen to it and you're like, I mean, it's like listening to a chainsaw a little bit. And so I don't think that, much in the same way that like LLMs, I don't think will take over and just like completely make everybody unemployed overnight, right? I don't think this is going to eliminate music as we see it today. It will change, and I think it'll in the end drive innovation. And at first it'll be a little lame, kind of like MIDI. Like MIDI was lame in the 80s, but now it's just like a part of every recording process.
Yeah.
Right. It'll sort of evolve into something that will be a useful tool.
Cool. Well, we have one question in the Q&A. If you do have questions, be sure to pop it in there. So this one's kind of going back to the beginning of our discussion,
Mhm.
whether or not the research team is from a different scientific discipline. So they're asking what kind and to what extent does that someone from a different discipline affect on the
Mhm.
efficiency of research? And maybe you have some own examples of somebody from a different discipline aiding in your own research.
Mm. Yeah. Well, I would say that when you do cross-disciplinary research, the reason it's hard is because there's always the kind of first potential barrier of understanding, even learning the terminology, right? What ambipolar diffusion means in plasma physics in the lab is quite different than what astrophysicists mean when they say ambipolar diffusion, which is strange, but it is what it is. But if you're able to kind of go across that hill, right, and find the time, find the effort, put in the effort uh, to cross that barrier, it can really be an effective way to level up, you know, your game. Because for whatever reason, right, um, we are like, science is done in silos a little bit, right? It's done in silos within some fields. Within the fields, there are silos of, oh, we do the problem this way, we do as opposed to that way. And so bringing in kind of a new, fresh perspective can be a really useful way to make progress on a given problem. It's not doesn't always work out. Sometimes the skills from one discipline are irrelevant to the other, right? But they can sometimes carry over, kind of cross-pollinate in a very interesting way. And there's an infinite number of, well, not an infinite, but there's a large number of examples of people coming in from, you know, say math or coming in from plasma physics into astrophysics and saying, hold on, but this is solved in my previous discipline. Like I know how to do this, right? Or coming in from mathematics where you kind of have some kind of a formal, way of tackling a problem, but it's all kind of abstract, and then suddenly finding a real life application for that method where everybody else is doing it in some brute force like dumb way, and you come in, you're saying, wait a minute, like I know like I know what to do here, right? So that can be very, very very powerful.
So, Konstantin, if somebody wants to follow your research, we
Mhm.
got your Twitter handle already for seventh season. But if someone wants to follow kind of what you're doing, what papers you're putting out, where you're presenting, what's the best way to go about doing that?
Yeah, so I only have the one outlet for on social media, which is that like I'll typically uh, post explainers about my research on Twitter. I assume nobody reads them, but the other place really is konstantinbatygin.com. Like on my website, I'll update my what I'm doing in terms of my publication list, etc. I don't update it often enough, but for research purposes, that's where kind of a lot of that information is maintained. And I would invite people to read my papers, but then also I would caution, just save yourself the headache. Like, you know,
Well, Professor Konstantin Batygin, I cannot thank you enough for joining. For those who are interested in the on-campus or any of the courses we have to offer, caltechctme.edu is the place to go. Konstantin, see you around campus. Thanks so much for joining us.
thank you very much, Nick.
Till this